I've always been known as a clean player and even have a famous video about playing clean, but a lot has changed in Last Day on Earth, so today we are going to talk about whether or not cheating is wrong. A year and a half ago, I made a video arguing that you should not hack or mod Last Day on Earth because it removes the challenge of the game, which ultimately ruins the purpose and enjoyability of gaming in the long term. So in essence, that video argued that when you hack or mod, you are ultimately stealing from yourself. This video is going to take a very different approach because the issues around cheating in Last Day on Earth have gotten a lot more complex. But before I do that, let me address real quick the two most common comments made on my last video. The first one was from hackers trying to argue that they were actually important to the economy of Last Day on Earth. The most liked comment of this nature was from F2F Gamer, who explains that when he raids another player's base, he doubles or triples the loot before taking anything home. F2F Gamer, you are literally proving my point. By cheating, you are not even familiar enough with the mechanics of the game to realize that those aren't actual bases that you are raiding. So not only are you delusional that doubling or tripling their loot would somehow help the economy of the game, but you have failed to realize that all of the time that you spent duplicating those items was a complete and utter waste of time. The second most popular comment was from people that argue that cheating is okay because the devs of Last Day on Earth have made the game too pay to win to be fun otherwise. This is a fascinating moral question, and I will be covering it towards the end of this video. So to sum up my last video, I was essentially arguing that cheating was stealing from yourself. Others argue that cheating is stealing from the devs of that game, but I'm not as convinced of that argument because in the context of Last Day on Earth, we are talking about a free-to-play game. The game is truly free-to-play as advertised by the devs, then shouldn't the players have the freedom to play it however they want? Now, the devs might argue that cheating is not actually playing the game because it is not how it is designed to play, and they're somewhat correct. When you start cheating a game, it is no longer players versus the challenge of the game, but rather players versus devs. Can the devs program better than the players can exploit? This is a very different game, but one that a lot of advanced players play, and it is a lot of fun. In fact, I might even say that it is more fun than playing the game at face value. But more importantly, it is a commonplace style of gaming, which should be factored into the equation of setting up a free-to-play game. A game that is advertised as free-to-play should be free-to-play, and therefore I would argue that the devs should not have the expectation that people should pay if they are advertising their game as a free-to-play game. Otherwise, it's a bait and switch. Now that being said, there are three different ways to cheat in Last Day on Earth, and each of them have very different implications in light of what I just said. The most obvious way to cheat is hacking or modding. I would argue that this is always wrong because it involves the player changing the code that the devs have set up. So you are no longer playing the game nor playing versus the devs, but rather stealing the creative property of those devs to create a new game that happens to have no challenge. And for those of you who did not hack or mod yourselves, but are downloading the hacked or modded versions from someone else, you're still at fault because you were giving that hacker money. You may not think that you were giving them because you got it for free, but every time you visit their site, you increase their website's advertising analytics, which ultimately makes them more money. So I'm just gonna say that in this category, it is always wrong to cheat. If you have no moral compass, then you can do whatever you want, but don't try to pretend that you are doing something that is somehow helpful or good. The least obvious way to cheat is to use glitches or exploits. This channel used to be known for some of the best glitches and exploits out there, like the ability to clear all of Bunker Alpha with just 3 spears, or completing the Smuggler's Camp with absolutely nothing, but about 6 months ago, Last Day on Earth made it to where partners are no longer allowed to share information about glitches or exploits because it negatively affects the economy of the game. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes getting too much too quickly can ruin the game for you. And from a developer's perspective, they spend a lot of time trying to calculate what rewards should be given for what challenges, and exploits can really throw off those formulas, making it harder for them to make a good game. So I think that makes a lot of sense, But this brings us back to the question posed in the comments of my last video. If the devs of Last Day on Earth are purposely setting up the game to where it is only fun if you spend money, then wouldn't these exploits to get more resources make the game more fun for those of you that are free-to-play players? This is a great question, and I would answer yes. I would argue that most of the time using an exploit or glitch to get more resources is going to be more fun. And since the devs have advertised the game as a free-to-play game, I don't think they should have a problem with this. Obviously they do, since we're not allowed to show them as partners, and I'm willing to respect that, but I also disagree with them. This brings us to the third and most controversial way of cheating, called the data clear trick. Originally, the devs of Last Day on Earth did not deem this trick as cheating, whereas I did. I was fine with other people doing it, but because it involves steps outside of the game, I felt like it was cheating. Now the devs are against using this trick because it breaks the economy, but more importantly because hundreds of players have lost their accounts using this trick. So I do not recommend using this trick, but I am a little curious why Last Day on Earth hasn't fixed it yet. The devs of Grimsoul Survival and Frostborn have both fixed this exploit, so I'm confused why the devs of Last Day on Earth haven't gotten around to it yet. Regardless, I'm still not 100% sure whether or not I think the data clear trick is wrong, because although it does require outside influence to manipulate the game files, it is technically something the devs could fix. So I'm curious about your opinions. Please let me know in your comments of whether or not you think it is wrong. Well, that's it guys, hope that helps. I have not found the time to grind to finish my ATV, so obviously I can't redo my videos yet, but as soon as I do, I'll let you guys know. Alright guys, I'll see you next time.